Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all having a splendid, wonderful, awesome, whatever good word you want to put on it, day, whatever time of day it may be in your part of the world. Here in Australia, it's late evening. I usually do my videos in the late evening because that's the only time I've got free. So anyway, tonight I'm going to do something completely different. Now, you all know I'm in love with French horror. I could make love to it if I could, but I can't, so I have to watch it. That's the next best thing. So I've done top 10, top 20 French horror, whatever that. But now, to continue my love for French horror, I thought I would show you some films that never get talked about but really should, because these movies are very underrated. And I actually think, they're certainly worth the effort to see. So in a bid to get more recognition for these films, I decided to make a video of very much underrated French horror films. Some of these aren't technically French, but they're spoken in the French language. There's some Belgian and I think some Canadian films. But these are movies that you haven't heard of. Now, you know all the big French movies like Martyrs, Inside, High Tension, Frontiers. All those movies you all know about, so obviously I'm not going to include in this video. And there's other movies that I have said previously that I love, like Mutants and The Ordeal. Those movies also won't be included because I've talked about them enough. So I'm going to go through this list in no particular order, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about them and tell you why you should to make the time and get the effort into actually watching these movies. So we're going to start off with a Belgian movie. It's French. I'm calling it French because there's some French actors, and it qualifies as a French horror film in my opinion. And the first one is called Cannibal. Now, this is a really fine blend of romance and horror, and I actually thought the horror aspect to it was nasty, and the romance was kind of touching, so it's a really good combination, and in the end it was a very surreal, nightmarish kind of film, and not many people talk about this one at all. So it's definitely a movie to look out for, and if you like French horror, you're going to like this one, chances are. Now, I'm aware that, some people might find it a little bit too slow burning, but if you like your slow burning films that have a good build up, this one is definitely a film to look out for. I really enjoyed this one. I liked it a hell of a lot better than I thought I would. So that's the first one. It's a Belgian-French film, but it still qualifies as a French horror movie, and that is Cannibal. Definitely worth the effort to go and see. Now the next one is a French animation. It's a collection of films, and it surprised me once again. And once again, no one talks about this one. This is called Fears of the Dark. It's a collection of tales that center around the common theme of the darkness and paranoia. Really, disturbing stuff. Although it's an animation, I still recommend it for all of you who like your French horror because this one's a little bit different, but it still has that French horror feeling to it. So, fantastic animations, and not enough people talk about this one. So definitely, if you're into something a little bit different, or if you like your animations, then this is definitely one to look out for. That's Fears of the Dark. Next one we've got, this is more so a thriller than a horror film, but it still qualifies as horror in my opinion. This is called The Serpent. It's also known as The Snake. This is a fantastic thriller. I gave it 5 out of 5, and it was just perfect. I mean, the ending was a little bit Hollywoody, but apart from that, it really reminded me of Cape Fear. The villain in this movie, played by Clovis Cornillac, fantastic French actor. He kind of reminded me of Max Cady. He was that same sort of intimidating presence on screen. So if you like the remake of Cape Fear, chances are you'll really like this one because I actually thought the suspense levels in this film were fantastic. And this is probably one of the most overrated, one of the most underrated French movies you could see. I've heard nothing at all about this movie, but it really blew me away. And barring the ending, which prevented it from being a really good movie, barring the ending, it is a very good experience. And if you like your horror movies, it's certainly worth the time and effort to have a look at The Serpent. Now this one, I consider this a masterpiece. Now this one has a lot of hatred for it, and I can see why, because it's a very political film. But I watched it and I was blown away. Technically this is a Canadian movie, but I've heard it's got French influence. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is, but it has a French connection, so it's put into the French horror. It is spoken in English, and it's called Territories. I loved it. Personally, I think this is a masterpiece. It is very political. It has a look at Americans' paranoia, following 9/11. I can understand the hatred for it, but as far as I'm concerned, I thought this was an absolute gem. It's not so much gory. On the back it says impressive gore scenes. Obviously, that critic's eyesight is not very good because it doesn't have a lot of gore, if any gore at all. So I'm not sure what he was smoking while watching the movie, but obviously he wasn't paying attention, or he's just a halfwit who doesn't know what gore is. But anyway, really, really good stuff. You're either going to love it or hate it. Personally, I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. So, a very much an underrated gem in my opinion. But just be very careful because it will provoke a response. Very depressing kind of stuff. But it does have a very real portrayal of today's society. This one is a movie that, once again, it's not really talked about, which is a shame. Not the best French horror movie going around, but it's certainly not the worst, and that is In Their Sleep. It had a sort of an artistic feel to this one. It was very, very depressing, like a lot of French horror films are. It doesn't really leave you feeling good. But this one was very simple, but it was done effectively, and I actually thought it was well worth the time and effort to watch it. Not many people talk about it, unfortunately, but if you like your French horror, then this one you have to have in your collection, as with all the other ones that I've shown. So yeah, this one is actually a really good one. Not the best movie going around from France, but it was still worth it. This one again has got a lot of hatred. I don't know why, but I actually found myself loving this. I've been told it was more a war film than a horror movie, but I disagree with that. I can understand how someone might think that. This is a very slow burner, and this is called Stranded. It's an army kind of movie. There's a lot of war footage, of war violence, but then it goes into a horror film later on. So it's kind of like two films in one. I can understand the criticism for the movie that it's a little bit slow, but personally I thought this is a fantastic psychological horror film. There's some pretty nasty violence in it as well, which surprised me because in the UK it's only classified as 15. So I wasn't expecting the violence that I actually got. So this one is well worth the effort. Not the best, but certainly not the worst. This one is a good slasher. I actually hated it the first time I saw it, but the second time I saw it, just for the rock climbing scenes, if anything. The slasher part of it was a little bit weak, but the rock climbing scenes are worth the purchase alone. That is High Lane. Lacked imagination in the slasher part, but with the rock climbing scenes at the start, they were just breathtaking. It made me sweat just watching it, and that shows you just how well those rock climbing scenes were shot. So this is a very underrated film, and I actually found myself, the more I watched this movie, the more I liked it. So maybe will require more than one viewing, but it's certainly a rewarding experience, if not just for that first half of the movie. Second, I've only got two more movies to go. This one is a very good suspense film. It's one of the newer French horror films, and this is called Prey. It's about killer boars. You don't see much of the boar, there's no CGI, but suspense builds up very, very nicely, and I found myself really enjoying it. So if you haven't seen this one, please do yourself a favour and go and see it. One of the newer French horror films to come out, and certainly one to remember. A little bit misleading. It says blood-drenched insanity. There's hardly any gore in it. As I said, it really relies on its suspense levels, so it does that very well. If you like your suspense, then you definitely get something out of this one. And then last but not least, one of my favourite French horror films, to be honest. I really, really, really like this one, and that is called Caged. Just a suspenseful film, a very dark subject, political once again in the Kosovo region, in the Balkans. But if you can just ignore the criticisms that they say this is propaganda, it's not propaganda, it's a horror film. And it's, yeah, one of my favourite French horror movies. Not only is it underrated, as I said, it goes right up there with films like Frontiers, High Tension, and all that kind of stuff. This one is a nasty little film, but yeah, it is really good. So definitely go and see Caged if you're a fan of French horror. Alright guys, that's it for this, my underrated French horror. I've got so many other French horror films, but I thought those films don't get talked about enough, so hopefully after this video makes you want to go out there and see it, and hopefully you fall in love with French horror just as much as I have, because it is head and shoulders above anywhere else in the world as far as horror is concerned. I love French horror. You all know that, and it won't be the last time you hear me saying that. So hopefully you found this video interesting, and until next time, until I get some more French movies, no doubt in the future will be making another French horror update with something. But until then, take care of yourselves, keep watching movies, and keep making videos, and I'll see you later.